Okay. Here's another little project. A friend of mine, his wife's grandmother grew up in this old farmhouse. And a couple of years ago, they were tearing that farmhouse down. And I salvaged a bunch of the material out of that house, and I salvaged it to fix up my old house. I took basically all the floors out of the upstairs of that house. And this lumber here I have on my saw is what's left over, what I didn't use on my house, which is not that much. But it's enough to build a small table for them as a gift. And I've had this book for years. And I've always liked that table on the cover there. And I've always wanted to build it, but I really don't need that table, so this will be a good opportunity to build this thing, and then I can give it away. So I'll get to scratch the itch of building the thing, and hopefully they'll like having it. So I guess we'll go ahead and get started. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to kind of rough cut a bunch of the parts. We need to start gluing up material to make the top, which I'll probably use whatever the whitest material I have here to make the top. And we'll also need to laminate stuff together to make these legs, because this material is, I don't know how thick it is. It's probably close to an inch. So we'll have to at least laminate two layers together to get enough to make the legs. We'll try to orient that in a way that it won't be as noticeable. So more on that when we get to it. So I'm going to go ahead and get to work here. We'll get this top together. Okay, now that the top is glued up, I gotta start figuring out material for the legs. So there's 4 legs, or 1 3/8 inch square, I think is what he has in that plan. I'm gonna make mine 1.5 inches. That way I have a little bit of room to trim them down. So I'm gonna need 8 pieces, 1.5 inches by 29 inches. They're supposed to be 28.5 finished. So that's what we're going to do next. We'll cut up all that stock. Okay, so we've got our leg stock, it's gluing up. We've got to make the aprons now. So we've got the top, the legs. This stock here is going to be the aprons. There's 3 of those. And I'm thinking this, I like about the drawer sides to make, and I may have to glue up material for that. But I'll glue up these 3, I'll cut these, and we'll glue up these 3 aprons, and then I guess we're going to be waiting for some glue to dry before we can do much else. So I think I have most of the rest of the material. I won't have to glue up. The only thing that's a mystery I haven't looked into is the drawer slides. I may have to glue up some stock for that, but we'll see. We'll see what we got here. But we'll go ahead and do this. We'll make the aprons, and you can watch along as we do that. It's just more of the same. Okay, I need a couple of rails for the front of the cabinet, so which are these pieces here on the top and bottom of the drawer. So I need to get those two, and I need the drawer front, so I need that, and then I'll need to glue up something for the drawer sides. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll get those rails cut and that drawer front cut, get those set aside. Then I'm going to look and see what I got to do to get something for the sides of the drawer. And then we should have most of our stuff cut. There's a few internal parts that we'll have to deal with, but they're just little small pieces. So that's where we're at. Okay, so got all of our, or almost all of the rough parts made. There's just a few little pieces inside the drawer cavity that I did not make. Most of those are like, 1 by 3/4 inch stock. The drawer rails, some real basic stuff, and I've got plenty of material left over to make those things. I've got a bunch of stuff glued up. And I'm going to let that set overnight. Tonight I got church, so I'm going to go do that. And when I get home from work tomorrow, we'll continue on. We'll start working on squaring the table up, the top up, and getting our legs cut, at least the stock squared up. We'll start working on the joinery. And then we'll look at cutting the tapers after all the joinery's cut. So that is where we're at. So I don't know how much time. Probably got 2 hours in it so far. Not too bad. So hope this turns out well. This wood that I'm using is it was from a house that was torn down 2 summers ago, but the house was originally built in 1870. So this wood is old wood. These are trees that were probably cut down, right at the end of the Civil War. So it's kind of cool building something out of this material. So I hope it's been entertaining so far. I guess we'll go ahead and start squaring up the tabletop and messing with the legs. Here we go. All right, let's get all this stuff unclamped and see what we got. I'm going to go ahead and unclamp everything. I'm going to square up the stock for the legs and try to get it cut down to its at least its biggest square width. Get the tabletop cut to its final size. We'll get the aprons all run through the joiner. Get those to the right size. Got a little sanding to do on these drawer sides, and then we'll see where we're at. Okay, I have the top cut the size and all of the other pieces cut to size, meaning the aprons and legs. I filled a lot of the nail holes in the top with epoxy. I also noticed a crack in it, so I got that glued up. Normally I don't use epoxy to fill nail holes, but in this piece I'm going to, so you can noticeably still see the scars in this old wood. Here's one of the legs, piece of my leg stock, and even though it's glued up, since it's a very similar wood, it looks pretty good actually. Not perfect, but we're not going for perfect on this project. We're just going for nice, because we're not using perfect material. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to lay out all of the mortises and the tenons that go in the legs. And I'm going to do that layout work off camera. And what I'll come back with here in a second is I'm going to use my panner router. We'll cut all of the mortises first. I think we're going to use 3/8 mortises, and then we'll come back and figure out our tenons. We'll cut our tenons to fit. So that's where we're at. So I'll just see you in a second. Alright, so I've got to cut a mortise in each of these legs, actually 2 mortises. And this is a setup I'm going to use. I was going to use my panner router, which is over there with junk all over it. But I decided this is just going to work just as good because it's such a simple thing. I just need to mill a slot. So I'm going to do, I'll do 4 legs and I'll move my fence and do the other 4. So here we go. Alright, cut all the mortises. I made one mistake. The front pair of legs should only had a short mortise where the drawer goes, but that's not a big deal because I can fix that. I guess I'm fooling around with the camera and all this other stuff. My mind got mixed up, or I'm just a sloppy carpenter. Well, it could be a little each. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use this tapering jig, and we're going to cut the tapers on the legs. We'll see how that goes. I haven't used this thing in a million years. Alright, there's our 4 legs with the tapers cut on them. So now I guess the next thing to do is we got to cut the tenons on the aprons. And the little, I forget what they called them in the plans, but the little aprons up above and below the drawer. And then we can assemble the base of the table. Alright, we'll be back in a minute. Alright, let's see if we can cut some mortises here. Or not some mortises, some tenons. I'm just going to do this on the table saw with a rib fence. I'm not going to get out any of the jigs to do it. Just to show that there's 1,000 ways to do something. You don't necessarily have to have a tenoning jig to cut tenons on a table saw. There's a bunch of ways to do it. This is another way of doing it. Since I use the router table to do this, they're pretty good, but they're not perfect. The spacing of the where the tenon goes is off, you know, a 64th of an inch, or maybe probably not a 32nd, but they're off a hair. Not enough to worry about. I'm going to set this thing up to cut these tenons, and we'll get the one side cut on all of them, and then we'll sneak up on the other one until it fits. So we'll go ahead and get that going. Okay, now that I've got one of these fitted, got the rest of them close, just need a little tuning. I'm going to go ahead and do this off camera. I'll fit the rest of these just like I did this one, and then we'll come back and glue her together. Alright, I've got all of the tenons cut and tuned up, and we'll go ahead and glue this thing together and let it sit overnight, and we'll come back in the morning. Alright, well here it is out of the clamps and with the top set on it. And it's a nice looking little table. I like the form of it. So I guess our next step is we're going to have to deal with the drawer slides and all the stuff inside of it. And we'll have to make the drawer box and fit the front. And we're going to have to turn a handle and we'll be done with it. Alright, I've got a little scrap of dogwood here left over from another project I had. I really don't think I have any more of this left. It was from a tree I cut down in Woodsfield several years ago. And I'm going to go ahead and I think I got enough here to turn the knob for the handle. I feel like doing something a little more artistic here for a minute. So we'll get that done. There we go. I just sanded it by hand because I didn't feel like putting the chuck on the lathe in order to sand this on the lathe, and just took a few seconds. Turned out pretty nice. Alright, so the next thing we need to do is we need to make runners, and we need to make cleats to attach the top. And what we're going to use is this right here, which is some pieces of cherry I have left over from another project. These were from a tree that came down in a town called Delton, which is not very far from where I live. Actually, it wasn't a tree, it was just a big branch. Came down several years ago, and I salvaged some lumber out of that. So I've got this hanging around, so we'll make those pieces out of there. And this will be sufficiently hard for the drawer slide. Cherry's not super hard, but it's a lot harder than pine. So we'll go ahead and make all those parts and see if we can get them installed. Alright, so you can see how that fits in there. That's going to be the drawer runner. It's got to have a little more work done to it. I'm gonna cut a notch out of the length of it, and we'll do that off camera, and I'll show you what it looks like here in a second. Okay, we have the drawer slides in, and we have an upper board here. And that is going to serve as the mount for the top, as well as a way to keep the drawer from kicking out. So in the plan for this, they called that a kicker. But of course, I'm going to build my drawer different than they call out in the plans because I have my own ways. So let's go ahead and get this top mounted. Alright, there's that part. Now on to the drawer. Well, we've got our drawer sides cut the width and length, which is a pretty boring thing to watch. But now we're going to go ahead and put the drawer box together. We're going to use box joints. I've got a 1/4 inch box joint blade and a saw. And the jig is a jig by that's a guy named Matthias Wandel, sells plans for that at woodgears.ca. I built a bunch of his stuff. He designs great tools and jigs. So let's get going. Okay, I'm just going to leave that same box cutter dado blade in here, and we'll cut the slot for the the drawer bottom. We're going to cut a slot on the two sides, and the back and the front we're just going to cut off flush. And you'll see why once we start putting the bottom on. So I'm going to go ahead and set that up and we'll get going here. Alright, there is our drawer box. We're going to cut a bottom for it. I've got this piece on backwards. But we're going to cut a bottom for it, and then we'll glue it all up and she'll be ready to rock. Okay, so now we've got our drawer unclamped, and I just sanded it. And unfortunately, there's not a real good way of getting a hold of it. So there we go. Seems to roll pretty good. And the next thing we got to do is I got to fit this drawer in there, this drawer front. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to drill a hole in the center of it, and I'll put a drywall screw in there, and that'll let me secure it while I line up the drawer front to the box to get the reveal correct. I'm going to attempt to film this. We'll see what happens. It's sometimes hard to get the phone in the right position. All right. So I've got a little hole drilled there in the center of this. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to hold it up here and attempt to get it into a place that I'm happy with. I might have to use some, probably be better if I use some little wedges of wood, which I just happen to have right here. Yeah, that looks pretty good there. Just need to get the left and right, which I'm not 100% happy with that. That looks pretty nice right there. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this drywall screw and just put it in the middle here. There we go. Get rid of this junk. And that's pretty nice. Not bad. Alright, so now I'm going to take it out. What I'll do is I'm going to put in a couple of screws on the inside to hold the drawer in place. I'll do that off camera, and then we'll drill a hole and put the knob in. Okay, looks like we got all the woodworking part done. Now we've got the part that I don't enjoy nearly as much, which is the finishing part. But everything works nice, and I think they're going to be happy with it. At least I hope they will be. Well, it's not too bad, considering that it's made out of, 150-year-old recycled pine. It went together okay. I guess I'll get to varnishing it, and I'll bring you back when she's all done. Thanks. Okay, here it is completed. Looks pretty nice. Just got a couple of coats of varnish on it. See the drawer. You can see the way I put the drawer together. So it's a box joint with just hardwood runners on it. So not a bad way to make a drawer. Maybe if I was to do it again, I might do it a little bit different, but this is satisfactory. All right, thanks for watching.